Hi class, today we're going to be 4th grade. In the last session that we discussed, we talked about the different cultures of North Carolina and how North Carolina was settled. We talked about the Roanoke Indians and how they met with the white settlers when they came in. The expedition was led by Sir Walter Raleigh. We discussed that a little bit. We had a writing assignment talking about the Lost Colony. What do you guys think happened to that? We also talked about the, excuse me. We also talked about the white settlers, and we did a debate on that, whether the white settlers had a right to the land or not, and the Indians, whether they said, you know, we were here first. Take these off, they're fogging up a little bit. I'm sorry about that. So today we're going to talk about 3 native Indian tribes that are native to North Carolina, which are the Cherokee, the Catawba, and the Roanoke. So after I say this, I want you guys to pause the video, and I want you to write down 5 things that you know about the Cherokee, Catawba, or Lumbee/Roanoke tribes. Anything that you know, that you've heard, and just take a quick second to do that. So you can pause the video now. Hey guys, so you guys have written down about 5 things about what you think about, or what you know about the Cherokee, Catawba, or Lumbee tribes that are native to North Carolina. So I want you to keep that list handy as we go throughout the lesson, because I want you to see what you guys know, if you're wrong about some things, if you learned some new things. Just take a couple notes as we go through. There will be an assessment in class, so please pay close attention. The first tribe that we're going to go over is the Cherokee, which most people know a lot about the Cherokee. That is probably the most well-known Indian name of North Carolina. And most people in North Carolina have a little bit of Cherokee in them. I, myself, am 1/8 Cherokee. My great-great-grandmother was Cherokee and Red Indian, so I have that in my blood. Cherokee, the actual name, means speakers of another language when you translate it to English. And the Cherokees lived all along the eastern coast. They lived in North Carolina, South Carolina. They lived all along the eastern side. And they were really native to this region until what we call the Trail of Tears. And the Trail of Tears was a movement that spanned from throughout the 1800s, the early 1800s, and was eventually finalized in 1907 with Oklahoma becoming a state. But the Trail of Tears was about 125,000 Native Americans were forced to leave their lands in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Florida, and Alabama, because the white settlers wanted their land to grow more cotton. So they were taking their land, they went to the government, and they forced them to move all the Indians to Oklahoma. So this was called the Trail of Tears because it was very sad. 100,000 Native Americans had to leave their homes and everything that they knew and restart over on a reservation. So the Indians, the reason what caused the Trail of Tears was the Indians were very feared and were resented because of the Lost Colony and because of stories that people had told before. So they were feared and resented, and the white settlers felt, well, that land belongs to us and we want it. So they were going to take the land from them. So some laws were passed that were restricting the rights of the Native Americans. They wanted the Native Americans to go. They didn't want them here. They were going to do anything and everything to make sure they left. So Andrew Jackson was saying, you know, we want them out, and so most of the Indians decided, hey, let's just leave, let's not try and fight the government. Well, the Cherokee actually went against it, and they said, no, we're not leaving, this is our land, this is our home, we're not leaving. So they actually took a case which went all the way to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court that you can get to. And they said, you know, we don't feel as if it's right, so it was passed. Well, Andrew Jackson went around that law and said, you know what, I want them out. So he sent government officials and the army and everything else that he could send to force the Cherokee out. And a lot of the people died because, you know, it was during the winter, so it was very harsh conditions. A lot of the Indians died. They didn't have what they needed to stay safe during the winter being forced out. So that's what the Trail of Tears were. So when I reference that, you'll have a little bit of understanding. Back to the Cherokee. They were one of the largest eastern tribes of all the Indians that were prevalent in the eastern part of America. And when they were located to Oklahoma, as I said, many of them died. So then when they moved to Oklahoma, they didn't just say, okay, you're across the state line, here you go, be free. They actually moved them to a reservation. And a reservation is a land that belongs to the Native Americans that is completely under their control. They control everything that goes on the reservation, so it's not like when you live in a state, you still have state laws and federal laws. Under the reservation, none of that applies. They make their own rules, they do their own trials, all that kind of stuff falls under what they believe. So you know how you have the Indian chiefs? The Indian chiefs pretty much are the lawmakers on a reservation. So, just a quick little facts. Most of the Cherokee now that you hear of, you know, I'm Cherokee, I speak English. So most of the Cherokee now speak English, but they do still go back to what they originally spoke, which was their language. And a couple words that I found out was Osio, which is a greeting, which is like hello, or it can mean goodbye, and Wado, which means thank you. So you know a few things in Cherokee. You know Osio, which is hi, and Wado, which means thank you. Another thing about their language is that they don't actually have an alphabet like we do. We have A, B, C, D, and so on. They don't have that. They use sounds like the TH sound or the WH sound, syllables. And a man named Sequoyah came up with the syllabary. Syllabary, very similar. And the symbols that he made go along with particular syllables. So if you say TH, it might be a smiley face. Or if you do WH, it might be an arrow pointing to the left. That's what the kind of things they use. And they use it to communicate rather than having a traditional alphabet. So the next tribe that I'd like to discuss is the Catawba tribe. And their name actually means fork in a river. And they also were forced on the Trail of Tears in the 1800s, but they went more willingly than the Cherokee did. They didn't put up as much resistance and go to the court system and go through everything that the Cherokee did. So, they also lived on the reservation, which we talked about a reservation being under complete Indian control, and they also speak Cherokee as well. In their language, I learned that Hawoh, Hawoh, means thank you in their language. But I was not able to find what it means as a greeting to say hello or goodbye. So for right now we have hello, which means thank you. Their prominent source of finding food or gathering food was hunting and farming, which is why the white settlers won their land, because they were really good at farming. So they thought it was the soil. They didn't know that it was what the Indians did. The way that the Indians break up is that the men and the boys go hunting and they find deer or buffalo or whatever animal was available, and they bring that home, and that's their meat source. They bring it home, and Indians are very resourceful, so they use all of the animal. So you've heard about the buffalo and how they used it, and they would use the fur, and they'd use the tendons, they'd make rugs and clothing, and they would use the meat to eat, obviously, and they'd use like the head for certain things, or they'd plant things and put it in the soil to make the soil more fertile. All that is true. They are very resourceful people, and they did use animals in whatever way possible. They'd make it into clothing, they'd make it into using for their houses, because they didn't have traditional houses like we do where we have bricks. They had teepees, and they had small villages that usually were something that they could easily pack up and they could move, because they were nomads, and nomads are people that are constantly moving. Traditionally, they move around behind whatever animal pack that they are following. So if they're following the buffalo, when the buffalo stop grazing where they're near and they start moving to another place, the Indians pack up their teepees and their entire village, and they follow the buffalo wherever they're going. When you have the gathering, that's more of the female's job, the women of the tribe and the young girls. They are in charge of the cooking and cleaning and making sure the village stays intact. So they would plant things in their gardens, and they'd have rows and rows of maize, which is pretty much corn. And they'd plant that, and they'd have beans and squash and pretty much a lot of vegetables, things that are going to give you the other things you need besides the protein and meat. So they had the great vegetables that kept them, and that's how they stayed so lean. So they were great at farming and hunting, and the Catawbas are really known for their farming. The other tribe that I'd like to discuss is the Lumbee tribe, which is also known as the Roanoke tribe. And if you remember from last time, we talked about Roanoke being where the Lost Colonies settled. And their name actually means, when you translate it all the way back to English, it means dark waters. And a lot of them have mixed origins. They're not really sure where they came from. But a lot of people believe that this Indian tribe was what the Lost Colony became. When you hear that the Lost Colony could have possibly been attacked by Indians, a lot of people believe that the Indians that didn't attack them, they actually brought them into their tribe and incorporated them into the tribe and married within, and eventually they became Indians, and just you had the paler skinned Indians and the blonde hair and the brunette hair, and it wasn't so much darker and tan skin. And that's where you get the Indians from, that they weren't necessarily killed. That's what most Indian tribes believe, and most historians are starting to believe that idea as well. They also speak English now. They don't really have a lot of their own language. They do, but it's not as widely used throughout the Indians. They don't have a written or a syllabary like the Cherokee do, and neither do the Catawba. But the Lumbee/Roanoke tribe were known for their wood carvings. And if you guys have ever looked at Indian wood carvings, they are amazing. We all know that the Indians were very equipped with what they needed, like they made their own spears, their own weaponry. They were very good at wood carving. So another thing people might think that the Croatan word that was carved on the tree was not necessarily carved by the settlers, but was carved by the Indians. And many of the records about this tribe have been lost. A few fragments have been saved, and they've been trying to piece together more about maybe the Lost Colony. Maybe there are more clues, but for right now, there's really not a lot about them. So we've talked about the Trail of Tears. We have talked about the Cherokee Indians, the Catawba Indians, and the Lumbee Indians. And we've gone over things that they're mostly known for, that they're really known for speaking English, that they're known what their names mean. So take a few seconds. You want to go over the video again. There will be an assessment. So please take care. Bye.